Now on to Ali Said from PSTD. I'll hand over to him for our learning debate. He's going to be our moderator, and he's going to be joined by Adil Anwar as panelist from the Fatma Group, Atika Imtiaz from K Electric, Idhisham from Ufone, and Sahil Adeem from the Source Code. They basically are going to be his panelists for tonight.
Assalamu alaikum, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We welcome you to this learning debate by Pakistan Society. I'm representing Pakistan Society for Training and Development. In the show, we have a very interesting debate today where we will be talking about COVID-19's greatest consequence, which is e-learning. क्या ये एक फैशन है या एक वाकई में टूल है जिससे ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस अपनी कैपेसिटी बिल्ड कर सकती हैं ऑनलाइन वर्चुअली बगैर फेस टू फेस कनेक्शन के एज अ ट्रेनर मेरे इसके ऊपर बड़े बहुत सारे रिजर्वेशंस हैं जिनके बारे में मैं आहिस्ता आहिस्ता बात करता जाऊंगा एज वी प्रोग्रेस थ्रू आउट. We have an interesting session. We have an interesting panel here today. Up front, we start off with the lady. We have Atika Imtiaz from K Electric, followed by Mohammad Ehtisham Khan from Ufone. We have Adil Anwar with us from the Fatima Group, and we have Sahil Adeem from Source Code. I hope I got his name correct, Sahil Adeem. Okay, welcome everybody. I hope आपकी आवाज आपको आ रही है. सबसे पहले तो डिजिटल पैटर्न्स चेक करने होते हैं किसी भी किस्म के वर्चुअल सेशन में. मेरी आवाज आप तक आ रही है? कैन यू हियर मी?
जी बिल्कुल. जी we can hear you.
Welcome Ehtisham, welcome Adil Sahib. How are you doing, sir?
Alhamdulillah. Doing very well, thank you.
All right. So we'll probably have the other two join us as we progress for the show. पहली बात तो थोड़ा सा बताएं sir, how has COVID-19 treated you so far? How have the 4 months been so far? Because you're both part of the fraternity. क्या हो क्या रहा है 4 महीने में हुआ क्या है?
I think in terms of the productivity शायद कह लें कि डबल काम हुआ है. So perhaps we have been able to create more impact and value for the organization.
All right.
Well, I'll second.
What's been happening at your end, sir?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Well, similar. I would second Adil के productivity बहुत ज़्यादा हो गई है. कुछ look and feel लोगों की बदल गई है. You can see my hair a bit change और काफ़ी लोगों की दाढ़ी बड़ी हो गई है. उसके अलावा I must say कि challenges जो है न्यू नॉर्मल के अब न्यू तो नहीं रहा, काफ़ी पुराना होता जा रहा है आहिस्ता बिकॉज चेंज की स्पीड बहुत ही क्विक है. लाइक ऑफिशियली लोग समझ रहे हैं कि आप घर पे हैं और घर वाले भी समझ रहे हैं कि आप घर पे हैं, बट एक्चुअली यू आर वर्किंग, सो एक्चुअली मोर डिमांडिंग.
ट्रू. मैं आज एक वर्चुअल सेशन एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए कर रहा था एंड वहाँ मुझे एक साहब ने बताया कि पहले तो टाइमिंग होता था 7 बजे के बाद घर चले जाते थे, उसके बाद एटलीस्ट एक्सपेक्टेशन नहीं होती थी काम करने की. अब तो रात के 11 बजे भी ईमेल आती है और एक्सपेक्टेशन ये होती है कि आधे घंटे में जवाब वापस आ जाएगा. सो द न्यू नॉर्मल इज अ बिट मोर पेनफुल फॉर एम्प्लॉइज इफ दे आर ऑन द फ्रंट लाइन. साहिल, वेलकम.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome for being here, sir. Sir, what's been happening last 4 months? How have the last 4 months been?
Well, it's been pretty busy in terms of your mental occupation. Magar it's more of a hysteria that everyone's feeling. मेरे साथ भी वही कुछ चल रहा है कि किस तरीके से एक मिड पॉइंट कब अचीव करें कि where we can actually be as effective as possible और उसके साथ साथ safety measures भी साथ साथ रहें and face the actual fear inside people. and we have to suppose the fear now. पहले कभी ऐसा था नहीं. So it's a little edgy, but it's pretty normal in मतलब जिस तरीके से मैं anticipate कर रहा था academically कि लोगों का fear factor कहाँ जाएगा, उस level तक गया नहीं वो. People are pretty the normal distribution is लोग काफी people took it a little casually, which had its pros and cons in terms of our training industry.
Okay. I'll just jump right to the questions. मेरा पहला सवाल है, and any one of you can jump onto the action bandwagon जो सवाल को पहले अटैक करना चाहे. पहला सवाल ये कि मतलब ये e-learning जो है और ये जो virtual sessions है, क्या ये कोविड-19 के पैरामीटर्स नहीं रहेंगे, या जब हम कोविड-19 से फुल्ली बाहर आ जाएंगे एक पोस्ट कोविड-19 वर्ल्ड में, उस वक्त भी ई-लर्निंग सेशंस हो रहे होंगे, या ये ई-लर्निंग सेशंस पर्टिकुलर एरियाज को टारगेट कर रहे होंगे जहां टेक्निकल ट्रेनिंग्स हैं, या हाइब्रिड लर्निंग है, या ब्लेंडेड लर्निंग का कॉन्सेप्ट है, या दे विल लिटरली बी टेकिंग ओवर द लर्निंग एंड डेवलपमेंट स्ट्रीम. सो एनी वन ऑफ यू whoever wants to go at it.
Sorry, I got disconnected. So
I will attempt it here, Ali.
Gigi, shoot.
Okay,
Sure.
I think blended learning has its, but the e-learning landscape has established its place in this COVID time. And I'm not saying it because it's, I'm also saying it because it's very easy to map the learning path when you are actually assigning it through e-learning. So पहले ये होता था कि there was like a lot of offline learning taking place, and then there was a lot of focus and time spent by the learning team on coordinating that effort. So it was a whole event arranged, and then there was a lot of focus on making sure that the post follow-up also used to take time. So if you look at the tools and gadgets, leverage them to the full advantage, the complete experience for the employee and for the organization. So बहुत mature हो गया है process पिछले 4-5 महीनों में. बहुत पहले भी जिन organization ने start लिया था, I think they would also agree to the fact that the ROI from this platform for virtual learning has really
I think Adil,
Okay, I think
we lost you.
पैटर्न पे एम्प्लॉय के लिए बहुत ज्यादा over a period of time. You're not bound to actually attend any learning module at a specific time. It's like on the touch of your button. So people who are used to extra mobilities, for example, are now connected virtually throughout the world, and whether it is any urban area or rural area in Pakistan, the same applies for that. Secondly, जो speakers हैं, पहले again there used to be a lot of time spent on scheduling the internal speakers, apart from the external faculty of speakers. Now the internal speakers are also feeling challenged in a different way, because their audience would like to listen to them more. So engagement आसान होगी using your subject matter experts and your senior management, and they're also feeling excited about it, because पहले अगर आप HR वालों से पूछे तो साल में 3-4 टाउन हॉल्स होते थे. अब every day you can have a direct communication with any specific audience, target audience that you would like to identify with. So I think there are a lot of new horizons, a lot of new possibilities that have emerged. Now, leveraging those opportunities and sustaining them would be a challenge, but I think this is the new normal. It is going to stay. Pakistanis को वैसे भी जब तक आप challenge ना करें, वो ज़्यादा passion energy show करते नहीं हैं. So this situation has really challenged us as a nation, and I think we'll all actually we come much more prepared now for future.
Well, I think Adil ने जितने points बताए, I fully agree and fully endorse.
Atika just joined us. Atika, the same questions, to you as well. Do you think that at organizations like K Electric, where practical insight is very important and labs based training and development हो रही होती है, खास तौर पे जो टेक्नीशियन लेवल है. Do you think that this e-learning can survive in the long run, या ये बस COVID-19 का एक पैरामीटर था और इसके साथ फेड अवे हो जाएगी?
Ali, thank you for asking me that question, because that is a very pressing question right now for an organization like ours. But see, an organization like KE has all sorts of backgrounds and cultures and people. It's a very diverse organization. There are engineers, we have management staff, we have non-management, and then we have a huge network academy which runs on lab-based programs. Thankfully, even before pandemic hit, we started to work on some digital simulations, because as I think my colleague mentioned, things are moving, things are changing. We have millennial workforce joining in, and their ease of use of technology and their comfort with technology has really made a change in the recent years, I feel. So people look forward to such digital mediums of learning instead of the old ways of going into a workshop session and spending an entire day in a lab and learning something out of it. I feel that has significantly changed. But and as far as COVID is concerned, COVID से फायदा I think हम लोग को ये हुआ है कि पहले उन चीज़ों को शायद हम we were just thinking about those things and we were expecting them to work. Now, since it has forced us to move into a completely virtual education setup, we actually found out that it's not completely impossible. We tried it out because we were forced to, and then we thought that, and then we've come out of it as something which can really work, and it has been working for us. We're delivering numerous sessions, not just webinars, numerous process-based sessions, and I mean, as everybody knows, how it has changed the landscape altogether. The virtual medium of connecting with each other has really changed it altogether. And so, I mean, the way we looked at it earlier has absolutely changed, and I don't think it is going anywhere any soon. In fact, what we have decided as an organization is that we're going to use a blended approach, because we do have facilities also, and we were already planning on moving on to some digital simulations. For example, I'll give an example. Even before the pandemic, we were introducing a gamified digital simulation for our IBC network. It was an orientation that would introduce not just the distribution people, but people who were coming from different enabling functions to understand how electric network works in an organization, and what will you do in that environment if you were given a role of, for example, a recovery manager or a GM cluster, and under certain circumstances. So for us, making a individual go through that environment physically was not practical, because we're huge as an organization. So we were already thinking on shifting to digital means and trying that out, and then the pandemic came in, and now that investment that we were making in that project is it started to make even more sense for people. So I don't think it's going anywhere or fading any sooner. In fact, हम इससे बहुत कुछ सीखा है हमने, जो शायद हम उस वक्त एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे थे कि होगा नहीं होगा, it will work, how will people react to it. I think that anxiety is almost gone now, because we know that it will definitely work, because people have now within this span of 5 months become used to of this medium. So I think all of this is pretty much possible.
Thank you, Atik, for that input. Sahil, you belong to the other side of the spectrum, which is training and development. And as trainers, we've been honed in an environment where we've been taught pedagogical principles and andragogical principles, and instructional design has somehow been part of these two clubs. Now with virtual learning, where do you see, what kind of principles will we be applying? This is adult learning to a very new extreme. If you could shed some light on that, Sahil.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'll tell you why. Because when I actually started this training company, my credo was simple, that I was against this very education system. See, the training industry inherits this classroom environment through the schools. And I was against the very core, कि जो basic psychological principles हैं. The thalamus does not really react to the whiteboard or the blackboard. and digital learning actually enhances the defect. So जो andragogical या well यहाँ पे pedagogical तो हम बात नहीं करेंगे because we're just adult learning here. We're talking about adult learning. See, the real problem that I actually see specifics to the L&D objectives, which is the measure of learning. वो अभी तक training industry ने numerically or even Rickett scale के ऊपर place किया नहीं था, and that's a big problem. Because training industry, because I'm on the other side of the table now, because I was on this side of the table where I was actually getting training companies to come and present every single thing. And I knew, and the both parties always know that, as soon as the training program is going to be over, there's absolutely no way to understand whether we paid the right price or the value is actually going to be measured at any level. Specifically soft skills, so it's never on the table. The discussion is not even on the table of how are we going to measure this softer part of the skill, which is more than 50% of the training budgets for every company, actually more than 70% in the last 2 years. So andragogical भी जो technique लगाते थे trainers, वो case studies दे के या role plays करके classroom में, it was a straw man argument that training industry always had कि हम involve तो कर रहे हैं, andragogically proven है, even though I personally was contesting it academically at a lot of educational forums कि जो basic psychological learning paradigm है इंसान का दिमाग जो है वो तो role plays और case studies के साथ सीखता ही नहीं है, because before he enters the training room he knows that there is absolutely no stake, and if we actually use the actual learning model of the brain, which is let's just take for example the operant learning. Now उसके ऊपर negative reinforcement हो सकती है, ना positive reinforcement हो सकती है. He has absolutely nothing to gain or nothing to lose. So role plays करे या वो case studies देख रहा हो, it is a temporary RAM that refilling of the person. So I actually think कि andragogical flaws जो हैं वो classroom वो corporate has been suffering for that for the last couple of decades, and a lot of money, I'm talking about billions here, has been spent with absolutely no return. Absolutely no return. And it's going to go on like that. I'm just one man. I'm not going to be able to, change the way industry moves. But we have HR here, specifically these forums, where HR needs to take a step कि पहले measure बताएं, बाद में बताएं आपका training model क्या है. We do not care of the content if it's not going to penetrate into a certain observable effectiveness or improvement, or at least, well, if I have the liberty to use the word efficiency. For example, sales training, we can actually measure it pre and post, but can we measure leadership? Yes, we can, not numerically, but we can put it on a spectrum and we can literally measure whether there is a change in the way the whole group has started to perform under that leader. And we came up with those models. Those models actually were too new, so we're getting a lot of reaction. Magar, let's just put digital learning in the diagram now. See now the whole online learning and the whole LMS industry, which is of course the biggest industry now, is going to take over the classroom training model pretty soon, regardless of COVID. We are actually not realizing that पूरी दुनिया इस वक्त online learning पे जा चुकी है, and the biggest indicator is YouTube. YouTube is probably the most used learning model in the world. I'm talking about from every demographic, from under 12-year-old to over 12-year-old, from over 80-year-old to under 80-year-old, any and every sort of demographic slice you're ever going to take is using YouTube. Why do you think they use YouTube? Number one reason is entertainment, and number two reason is actual learning for YouTube. And I'm just talking about YouTube as a case study. So अगर YouTube एक digital learning forum पहले से ही था, and by the way 2017 में every training company was facing this problem कि हमें अभी LMS पे जाना है और हमने अभी online learning शुरू करनी है, and all of my clients were telling me कि आपका एक recorded session भी हमें upload अपनी internet पे करना ही करना है, so we have to come up with a totally different module. train the trainer program जो हम करते थे, अब वो train the virtual trainer program 2018 में हो गया था. So digital learning was there. This is what I'm all with Atika on this one. Every company was on digital platforms, but does it suffice for the actual ROI of HR and the company? The answer is no. Of course it doesn't, because it doesn't really talk to the actual brain stem, the way the whole brain functions. And this is something that the decision should have been taken many years ago for the schools. We didn't even take it for the corporate. So this is something which I actually bleed, not just feel, but I bleed about this fact that it's just the whole training industry is actually standing in the air. And there will come a time when CEOs are going to come into a very, very big and strong reaction against it. कि कोई फायदा नहीं हो रहा ट्रेनिंग का. If anything, एक knowledge session हो रहा है, concept develop कर लेते हैं, और वो भी मैं आपको एक छोटी सी डिबेट बताता हूँ with the educationists are having कि Bloom's taxonomy fail क्यों हो रही थी. Now that's a pretty old taxonomy जिसमें पाकिस्तान के पूरी दुनिया Bloom's taxonomy पे इस वक्त teaching model कर रही है. Nobody was looking into the Swedish modeling of Fink's taxonomy, जिसने emotional parameters add कर दिए थे बच्चों के अंदर. I'm not talking about Finland. I'm talking about the scientist Fink's. हमें भी as a trainer कभी भी ये no company actually puts the trainer on the call के इस action को आप हमें substantiate this claim कि आप एक development लेके आएंगे. Where are you substantiating that claim? Since training industry,
I have something to say as well.
Yeah, so the training industry was getting away with it.
Sure.
And I'm just going to be 30 more seconds, sir. I'm sorry, if I may.
All right.
So what I'm saying is, if you look at it academically, the teaching and the training model was not developed based on two factors. Number one, the organic factor of how a human being learns. Number two, what is the actual demand of the company from that employee? मैं आपको एक example देता हूँ. Every year, every HR runs the appraisal system. And 60% of the appraisal is on the softer skills like leadership or teamwork or ethics. There is absolutely no technical measure which is given to the employees कि इसको हम पूरा over the year measure कैसे करें. It all comes down to the last minute dialogue between the subordinate and the supervisor, no matter what hierarchical node are we talking about. And millions are spent on those nodes throughout the year. Now, what I'm trying to say is कि इसको बहुत आसानी से measure कर सकते थे. Now we are in that stage of science where we understand how the whole hippocampus works और memory में retention कैसे डाली जाती है, वो कैसे डाली जाती है. We use the Skinner model. Operant conditioning करवा सकते हैं ट्रेनिंग में, जो हम करा रहे हैं कि stakes introduce कर दें. Training should be just an introduction of a task which will be done on the job and it will be measured as part of a KPI. और मैं जब भी ट्रेनिंग कराता हूँ मैं 1% KPI borrow कर लेता हूँ. If you do not give me a percentage of the KPI, either it's not going to be a positive reinforcement, nor is it going to be a negative reinforcement. They come in for an excellent lunch, an awesome break, or her training culminates at the very moment the trainer leaves the room. So ये जितनी भी andragogical processing है ना, उसको challenge करना जरूरी हो गया. I'm sorry, I just took a little long because it's
no. Thank you very much. I think we'll just come to you. You had a comment.
Debate, I must say. And
yeah.
I mean, we can take hours talking about it. I partially agree with Sahil, partially disagree with Sahil.
I think it's very interesting.
All that equal time. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what Sahil has said has set a good base for discussion. So thank you, Sahil, for that. Just to reinforce, you see, basically there are two challenges here. One is how you ensure advanced learning of specific cohorts in the learning organization, and second is how you ensure basic learning as knowledge addition for advancement of organizational ladder, specific to various tiers in the organization. So for the customized learning, I totally agree, because even if you look at the business simulation case, it has to be now tier specific, it has to be behavioral specific, it has to be industry specific. And then it has to be intelligent enough through artificial intelligence where you can actually gauge the readiness and the understanding level of the target audience. And during the whole learning process, you can change the game, right? So when you're actually doing business simulation, the facilitator has the understanding, and then there's a pre-read, so through which they also assess the capability of the learners. And then they also make sure that during the whole process, they are able to actually raise the level of difficulty or customize it according to how the group is taking along. So that is going to make, even for millennials and all generations, because we also have other generations, in the process, make it more coherent for them and more engaging for them. And then the way assessment is now given in terms of, completely like comprehensive 360 reports, where you can see how your peers have performed, how your juniors have performed, how your seniors have been performing, and then linking it to their previous performances. But then, having said that, as a learning manager, what I've seen over a period of time is that organizations have a larger challenge where they have huge numbers of employees. They have to be given certain set of modules to take them to the next level. Now you have to agree that how would you assess them, and then you have to give that challenge back to the training platform. Now that assessment is not only clearing exams, it is also how they are actually going to apply it on the job. So like we see in the Harvards of the world and also on the LinkedIn Lynda modules, that the application part is getting higher weightage. So those assignments are also being given at the right time and then tracked. Now that would actually ascertain the level of understanding and would also tell a lot more that perhaps, in the new classroom, the same concept applies, that people would perhaps be struggling within a particular tier and within themselves, not across the class. So perhaps I could be standing at a level 7, but my next level peer could be standing at a level 5. And it is fine if somebody is standing at 2 level below, because she might take longer time to come to the level where I am right now, because organization is set of employees.
All right. हमारे साथ एहतिशाम साहब, you've been with us. My apologies for not being able to come to you earlier. But there's a separate debate here that I'd like to touch upon, which is what do you think is the retention of these virtual sessions? जब हम ये तो कहते हैं ना, as a trainer, 50 to 70% हमारी जो training है वो lost in translation हो जाती है. The meaning is lost. 70% of that is lost by the time they get out of the training hall. तो digital sessions की retention measure कर सकते हैं. Is there a key challenge? If you could shed some light on that, sir.
Well, मेरे ख्याल में I would again जितने मुझसे पहले esteemed panelists बोल चुके हैं, I would almost agree to all of those with slight disagreement. मेरे ख्याल में this e-learning model gonna stay. अभी जो हमें सबसे बड़ा challenge फेस हो रहा है वो सिर्फ ये है कि जो already established हमारे पास platforms थे, उनके ऊपर तो ट्रैफिक 99% समझे एक्सपोनेंशियली बढ़ गया है. Get times more than मैं बता करूँ 500-600 times बढ़ गया होगा. जो हमारे करंट established trainers अवेलेबल थे या ट्रेनिंग समझे मेथोडोलॉजी अवेलेबल थी, उसको एज इट इज ऑनलाइन ट्रांसफर करने की अटेम्प्ट पार्शली हुई. पीपल आर ट्राइंग देयर डिफरेंट इंटरवेंशन जिसको वो सिमिलर ट्रेनिंग्स को ऑनलाइन में कन्वर्ट कर सकें. और डेफिनेटली बहुत अच्छा काम भी हो रहा है, बहुत अच्छी एफर्ट हो रही है. वी ऑल आर लर्निंग डेफिनेटली, बट आई मस्ट से कि हमें चूंकि बहुत सारे ऑप्शन,
मैं यही आपको थोड़ा सा मैं आपको यहाँ कट शॉर्ट करूंगा. हमारे पास एक सवाल है सरफराज मुनीर साहब की तरफ से, फेसबुक पे वो हमसे सवाल पूछ रहे हैं. वो कहते हैं व्हाट विल बी द प्रोसेस फॉर टीम बिल्डिंग ट्रेनिंग.
मैं उस पे भी आ रहा था, उनका क्वेश्चन भी पढ़ चुका था. I'll cover that too. I'll cover that too. I would say कि definitely spread बहुत increase हो गया है ट्रेनिंग का. पूरे मतलब नेशन वाइड आप इजीली लोगों को अप्रोच कर सकते हैं. बहुत अच्छे ट्रेनर्स को लोगों के लिए अवेलेबल करते हैं, जो कि पहले हम मेजरली कुछ सिटीज में अवेलेबल कर पाते थे, कुछ फैसिलिटीज में अवेलेबल कर पाते थे. बट आई मस्ट, और लॉन्ग लास्टिंग फॉर श्योर इम्पैक्ट है. इट्स गोना स्टे एज ए हाइब्रिड मॉडल, जैसे आदका ने कहा. आई एम श्योर इट गोना स्टे. बट आई मस्ट से कि एक ह्यूज बफर भी साथ साथ बन रहा है. Huge buffer इसका बन रहा है. People are actually craving for getting back to that old normal as well. That's humanly, I mean, natural as well. क्योंकि लोग वापस जाना चाहते हैं, नॉर्मल को लौटना चाहते हैं. तो जैसे ही आपने देखा मार्केट्स में क्या हाल है, जैसे ही जरा सा भी फ्रीडम मिला है. I just visited Islamabad a couple of hours ago. ऑल कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन एवेन्यू, ब्लू एरिया वाज फिल्ड विद व्हीकल्स, और सब हॉर्न बजा रहे हैं जैसे 14 अगस्त मनाई जाती है वैसी चांद रात मनाई जा रही है. पीपल आर एक्चुअली क्रेविंग फॉर दैट सिमिलर थिंग एज वेल. तो अभी जब, चूंकि मैंने आपसे कहा कि ऑलरेडी हमारी पर्सनल प्रोफेशनल लाइफ सबमर्ज हुई हुई है, जब सबने स्टार्ट किया सभी यही कह रहे थे कि यार कुछ समझ नहीं आ रही कि क्या हो क्या रहा है, वी आर टू मच बिजी. तो अभी जो नॉर्मली पुरानी ट्रेनिंग को भी ट्रीट जो किया जाता था वो यही किया जाता था कि इट्स अ ब्रेक फ्रॉम वर्क एज वेल. कुछ देर डिसकंटिन्यू कीजिए और जाके कुछ सीखिए और वापस आइए. हाँ, उसमें डेफिनेटली ये वाले चैलेंजेस थे कि कुछ लोग सिर्फ उसको खाना खाने, अच्छे एनवायरनमेंट में खाना खाने चले जाते थे, बट अगेन कुछ ना कुछ अच्छे मॉडल भी अवेलेबल थे जिसके अगेंस्ट कुछ ना कुछ लर्निंग्स लेकर भी आया करते थे. I will simply disagree with this कि वो 100% wasted effort थी. There was learning involved. हाँ, 100% नहीं, कुछ लोग बिल्कुल सीख के नहीं आते होंगे, but good certain percentage सीख के भी आया करती थी. So I will say कि people will actually crave to go back to that model. टीम बिल्डिंग सेशंस ऑनलाइन कराएं, आप जितना मर्जी उसको इंटरेक्टिव बना लें, पीपल विल नेवर गेट दैट यूएसए स्पाइस जो उनको एक्चुअली जो एंगेजमेंट मिलती थी, जो आप किसी ग्रीन एनवायरनमेंट में खड़े होके जहाँ पर आपको अच्छी ठंडी हवा भी लग रही हो, कुछ सीनरी भी अच्छी हो, वो आप वहाँ पे कहीं भी एक नॉर्मल सी बात भी एज ए मेमोरी आपको उसकी जो है रिटेंशन वो बहुत बेहतर होती थी और आपको एज ए मेमोरी ट्रीट करते थे. And
contextual imagery plays a pivotal role in defining what the process is for making that an experience.
Absolutely. और टीम बिल्डिंग ट्रेनिंग्स को मोस्टली एज एन एंगेजमेंट इंटरवेंशन ही लिया जाता था. इट्स नॉट कि आप कुछ लर्न करके भी आएंगे, इट्स जस्ट ब्रेक फ्रॉम द यू मे से नॉर्मल रूटीन, और आप उन लोगों को इकट्ठा करते हैं जो कि फेस टू फेस मिलते नहीं है. और अभी आप जिनसे पहले भी नॉर्मली मिलते थे, आप उनसे भी फेस टू फेस नहीं मिल पा रहे, आप उनसे भी आप सिर्फ ऑन स्क्रीन मिल रहे हैं. टुडे वी विजिटेड ऑफिस, और आज हम सबकी फीलिंग ये थी, हम लोग अपने फ्लोर को रेडी करने गए थे बिकॉज हमने मंडे से ओपन करना है पार्शल वर्कफोर्स को. तो वी वर सेइंग कि आप लोग सिस्टम से बाहर निकल के डिफरेंट लग रहे हैं, बिकॉज हम पिछले 4-5 महीने सिस्टम्स पे देख रहे थे एक दूसरे को. तो इट्स अ सिमिलर थिंग. टीम बिल्डिंग ट्रेनिंग्स जिस तरीके से पहले होती थी, जब तक हालात नॉर्मल नहीं होते, अब से कोई चांस नजर नहीं आ रहा. जितनी भी ट्राइल्स की जा रही हैं उसे करने की, उनकी वो वाली इम्पैक्ट या वो वाली अटेंशन जो है वैसी नहीं मिल पा रही जैसी कि नॉर्मली पिछली ट्रेनिंग से.
I'd like to add something here. Yeah. I'm really pressing to add something here because we've been trying a lot of engagement activities virtually, and वो 5 महीने में काफी कुछ करने की कोशिश भी की गई, Ludo challenge, all of that. So as I said, I partially agree with Sahil and I partially agree with Ehtisham also that yes, as human beings, we are craving that social interaction that was there in our normal routine. But I tell you, okay, there was a time when we used to read books and learn. We don't read books anymore. Our education system has completely transformed to when I was in university, I learned through presentations and PPTs. I did not touch books. So the world has changed, and let's accept that. In the earlier days, back in the days when we were kids, we used to play tennis and go out and play cricket. Today's kids play gadgets. They're all about PS4, and that's how they engage. It's entertainment for them. So the way people learn, the way human beings are changing, it's you know, it's a reality. But again, I mean, I would say there's no one way of saying that, you know, learning will only happen through virtually, or we will completely transform and go back to how it used to be. There has to be a blended approach because there are generations involved in the workforce. So you can't, I say knowledge transfer can very effectively happen through a virtual medium because there's lots of focus and there's less distraction. But when you talk about team building, so there are two things. A team work and collaboration training is a different thing, and a team building engagement offsite is a completely different thing. It's more of an experience when you bring together a team and make them, you know, get them to, you know, become a better team altogether. That's a completely different area. When we talk about bringing in managers and teaching or making them equipped with the tools and techniques of how to develop teams, I think that can easily be done through a virtual simulation. And I've seen some brilliant VR-based simulations coming up where you can actually get into the game and do all of that you would probably be doing in a normal, you know, physical setup. But again, would that affect somebody who's 45 years old? Would that be easy for somebody who's not tech savvy? No. But yes, for somebody who's in the age group of 25, 35, I would love that. I mean, and they would love that. And I know for a fact that they would. So again, I mean, for us as HR or as learning needs, we have to strike a balance somewhere. We can't completely shift to a virtual network or virtual mode of education, and we can't completely go back. We should not completely go back, and we should embrace what technology, what facilities, and what amazing tools technology is bringing towards us, like gamified digital simulations, like VR, which is an amazing tool that can be used in education today. So
Okay.
that's why
I think you've made a politically correct statement here. You've made it pretty decent on both sides of the spectrum. You agree with both of the spectrums, and you're right, because at this point in time, we really do not have a choice. Certain aspects will have to be delivered through virtual sessions. But as a trainer, I do 100+ days of training a year. I do them in Africa. I do them in the Middle East. I do them in Pakistan as well. And I believe that that spirit of being there, happening there, giving an anecdotal situation, and that experiential learning, getting the impact. When you crack a joke, you instantly get people to laugh on it, and the reactions are real. On a virtual environment, I'll be very honest. Consider me old school for a minute. I feel that you're just waiting for that response कि मैंने joke crack कर दिया और अब मैं सामने खुद पूछ रहा हूँ आपको मेरी आवाज आ रही है, आपको मेरी आवाज आ रही है.
I would like to add something.
Very interesting notion. Something that we're learning as we grow. Yes, Ehtisham, please.
I would like to change management के अंदर आपको पता है ना, उस methodology में जो उसका academic approach है, उसमें आपको stakeholder management बहुत चाहिए, जिसमें वो elevator speech है, बहुत सारी चीजें होती हैं. कोविड ने आके हमारे stakeholders को तो manage कर दिया, उन्होंने मैनेज कर दिया स्टेक को. नाउ अभी कोई चैलेंज नहीं आता. मेरा एज ग्रुप जो है, जो स्ट्रगल करता है, जैसे आत्का मेंशन कर रही थी, वो अब स्ट्रगल कर भी रहा है, तो दे आर ट्राइंग. और आत्का का एज ग्रुप जो है, आई एम श्योर वो ऑलरेडी वेरी मच देयर था, और उनको जो चैलेंजेस आ रहे थे, दे कोविड ने उसको एलिमिनेट कर दिए हैं. दे आर नो मोर हियर. सो वो वाला जो एंडोर्समेंट
नेटफ्लिक्स जनरेशन है, कंटेंट ऑन डिमांड चाहिए, हमें जब मीटिंग चाहिए हमें उस वक्त मिलनी चाहिए, रात 2 बजे भी देखेंगे हम.
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. See, हमें कुछ सीखना होता है. We go to Google, we type the top.
True.
We get all the learning. That's the age we are living in. Instant. We want to see. We don't want to wait for a workshop to teach us something. We will type it and we will get the knowledge. So yes, the experience is there, but we have to be aware of the era we are living in and the people that we're dealing with. So we can't completely let go of that. And I think it's more become of giving people a choice. So virtual mediums also there, so that people can learn on their pace and as per their convenience, and then you provide them experiences also. Has to be a blend.
Okay, Sahil, we've got a comment here for you. Hanan Tariq says you're a rock star. Wow.
Oh, he indeed is.
We're having an amazing intellectual debate, and there we have it.
I really like to appreciate the way Atika has argued, but I must emphasize that we're missing out on the big picture here. See, there's the two things we cannot confuse. One is knowledge and one is skill. Now, I cannot learn how to sew a suit by looking at a YouTube video, reading a book about it. Nor can I learn how to swim by just reading a book about it. Because there's a certain line that you'll have to draw, and that line is within the corporate of what kind of skill quotients that you need to achieve and what kind of knowledge quotients that you need to achieve. Now, I understand and I agree we cannot, nor do I want to stop the digital learning platforms. I don't want to stop them. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. But we have to be academically correct about this fact that skill cannot be learned through a screen nor a book. And that's how the brain works. We have to have a very kinesthetic developmental model, which Adil was referring to, that project assignment zaruri ho gayi hai at every hierarchical node.
Absolutely.
Now, there is a certain thing that you can do even under a pandemic situation, which cannot be at a group level, but it can literally be at an individual level. कि उससे उसकी sense or skill कैसे enhance की जा सकती है, from zero to whatever quotient that you can and which you have in mind. Now, it has been done, and it is always, I mean, for thousands of years, we've been doing that. There was no team building activity in communities and groups. It is a very recent concept that we've actually come to terms, and we've given up our arsenal. कि हमने learning वैसे नहीं करनी because we do not have the time, even though we are spending money to save time in the long term. Because I'd rather have a trained employee in a year than an untrained employee for whatever period of time, right? But
so yeah,
where do we draw the line between that?
Here I would like to say
that unless the training company has a very, not just a training company, anybody in the decision-making role, specifically at the HR, that unless we have a measure of skill, and now there is no measure of knowledge, I can understand we can do a lot of cognitive tests and people do that all the time. But skill ka measure, specifically soft skill ka measure, it exists. It not just exists within our internal modules that we're born with, but it exists in all the performance matrices जो कि HR ने develop की भी होती. और अगर HR ने नहीं भी की होती, तो line itself presents it to their own management every year or every quarter. Now, we just have to translate active or passive elements out of it कि इसके हमें critical to quality quotients ये हैं, इसके ऊपर अगर आपने training और development करवानी है तो ठीक है, इसके अलावा it's just luxury. And this is where my whole case is. That's the case I want to present at every HR forum.
I think we're back.
Unless we measure, we won't be able to manage. And
yeah, so I would like to say something here.
Just please.
Yeah, I think you have again identified a very important point, but that's the concept of integrated talent management here. So one, you have to identify very clearly that what are your functional competencies and behavioral competencies, for leadership. At Fatma Group, we have identified all functional competencies at various levels. There is a scale attached to it. There is a complete integration from the point, the employee enters, like at the time of interviews, till the time the employee is considered for the development framework, for their individual development plans, and to the time when you actually, make them, consider them for any promotion. So there has to be a development center which talks about assessment of these competencies and skills that you are referring to. If you don't link all this together, if the development is not taking place to a development center, if the assessment is not taking place to an assessment center, then what's the point having those systems and documents there at all? So, and I totally endorse what you are saying, and previously it was what Atika was saying. But coming back to the other point, I think these leadership retreats and these intercultural orientations are, like those physical activities, so as to say, are also important because we are forgetting the point that we are in a very multicultural work environment in the world. So what about those people who are now coming and visiting us from various other cultures, as expats, as like part of international teams? So they're learning during the time of the classroom learning, and also they're learning, of the office hours while interacting with all the colleagues and going through various cultural experiences is equally important. So that is why you have these team building activities. And that is why these team building, just focus more on leadership development and interpersonal connectivity and, a lot of rich cultural exposure, because that makes the whole organization global, in its mindset, in its culture, in its outlook.
All right. I would love to take this debate forward, but I am so sorry. We've ran out of time. And I know that there's certain camps that are loggerheaded each other. And that's the beauty of having a debate. The learning debate, always, it's the beauty of a debate is to have two opposing sides, which are not just presenting dogma, but are presenting facts. And it's great to have you all. Thank you very much for being here in LearnFest Digital 2020. I'm representing the Pakistan Society for Training and Development. And thank you very much, Ehtisham. Thank you, Atika, Sahil. Thank you. You have a lot of fans. There were some amazing comments. मैं तो खुद पढ़े ही नहीं, मैंने एक दो पढ़ दिए बस. मैंने कहा ये मुझसे बड़ा रॉक स्टार तो ये है. तो
Sahil seems to have a lot of fan following.
Yeah, Adil Saab, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
I'm sorry about
the
technical we had. Hopefully some other time. Let's keep our fingers crossed that one day we probably sit on a stage and have a face-to-face session and probably a longer debate. Thank you very much.
Without the mask.
Thank you so much.
Without the masks. It was a wonderful session. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you once again. Allah Hafiz. Stay safe in Pakistan.
Take care. Hafiz.
Hello.
Oh, that was so good and so heated. I actually started actually because शुरू इन्होंने कहाँ से किया? It was a learning debate. अच्छा ठीक है, आगे जाकर हमने करना था. और फिर उसके बाद is online learning here to stay? और फिर subsequently उसके बाद how is this going to be measured? Sahil raised a very professional and a very ethical start. But starting from there, they went in, basically agree that okay, yes, we do need to do some more work in how we measure. At the end of the day, we concluded that yes, we need to measure. But I think it's worth a watch for anybody who is not around to join in at this time. Mr. Saab, आपका क्या हाल है?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah, very good. I'm wonderful.
I am glad, and so are we all. I think.
Yes.
I think you had a very good day. ये बताएं कि आपने डॉन का सेशन देखा? आप बताएं आपके उसमें क्या डॉन का सेशन देखा? What were your takeaways?